The First Night. June 12, 1944. Northern France. Private Daniel Mercer was 19 years old when he began to understand that training and reality were not the same thing. The camp was unusually quiet that night. No one laughed. No one told stories. Even the wind seemed to move carefully through the trees. Daniel sat alone, his back against a damp wooden crate, his rifle resting across his knees. Tomorrow, they would move forward. Tomorrow, he would see someone he had only imagined in training. The enemy. He had memorized the rules. He knew the commands. He had repeated the drills until his muscles reacted without thinking. But now, in the silence before it all began, something felt different. His hands were steady during practice. Tonight, they trembled. He wasn't afraid of dying. Not exactly. What frightened him was something far quieter. A single thought he couldn't push away. What if I can't do it? And in the stillness of that night, that question grew louder than any battlefield ever could. Dawn arrived without warning. A pale gray light slowly replaced the night, revealing the shape of the world again. Daniel hadn't slept. When the order finally came, it was calm. Almost casual. Move. Boots pressed into wet earth. Equipment shifted. No one spoke. The forest ahead looked ordinary. Quiet. Almost peaceful. That was the unsettling part. Daniel followed the line of soldiers moving between the trees. Each step felt heavier than the last. Twigs snapped under boots. Breath turned visible in the cold morning air. He kept his eyes forward. Training said, focus. Stay alert. Control your breathing. But his mind kept asking the same question from the night before. What happens after the first shot? The forest grew thicker. The silence grew tighter. And somewhere ahead, unseen, someone was waiting. The first sound was not a gunshot. It was a bird. Suddenly lifting from the trees. Wings cutting sharply through the silence. Daniel stopped. The entire line froze. No one spoke. Every muscle in his body tightened at once. His grip on the rifle shifted instinctively. His breathing became shallow, controlled. Then it came. A distant crack, somewhere ahead. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just enough to split the morning in two. No one knew who fired first. Training took over. The line moved. Some soldiers dropped to one knee. Others scanned the tree line. Daniel raised his rifle. For the first time, he aimed at something that might aim back. He saw movement between the trees. A shadow. A shape. Another human being. His finger rested against the trigger. And everything slowed. The forest disappeared. The noise faded. There was only one question left. Can I do this? Time did something strange in that moment. It slowed. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat louder than the forest around him. The shadow between the trees moved again. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just enough to prove it was real. His finger tightened slightly on the trigger. He remembered the drills. Identify. Aim. Fire. Simple words in a classroom. Different words in a forest. The figure ahead raised something. Daniel's breath stopped. He could shoot now. He had every reason to. Every soldier around him was ready. But something inside him resisted. Not fear. Not weakness. Something else. A quiet voice asking one final question. Is this the moment that changes me forever? The shadow stepped clearer into the light. And Daniel made his decision. He lowered the rifle. Just slightly. The figure stepped fully into the light. It wasn't what Daniel expected. Not a charging soldier. Not a raised weapon. Just a young man, barely older than him, frozen in the same fear. For a brief second, they simply stared at each other. Two uniforms. Two rifles. Two racing heartbeats. The object in the stranger's hands lowered as well. It wasn't aimed. It never had been. Daniel felt the weight in his chest shift. This wasn't the faceless enemy from training manuals. This was someone who looked just as uncertain. Just as human. Behind Daniel, a voice shouted a command. Sharp. Urgent. The world snapped back into motion. Other rifles adjusted. Other decisions were being made. But Daniel didn't raise his weapon again. Because in that silent exchange between the trees, something had already changed. The moment ended as quickly as it began. Shouts echoed through the trees. Movement broke the silence. The other soldier disappeared into the forest, swallowed by fog and distance. Daniel stood frozen for a second longer. His rifle still lowered. Around him, the world had returned to motion. Orders were being followed. Positions were shifting. But inside him, something had shifted too. No one noticed what had happened between the trees. No one asked. To everyone else, it was just another tense encounter. But Daniel knew. He had made a choice that no training manual could prepare him for. He didn't know if it was the right one. He only knew it felt heavier than pulling the trigger ever would have. And as the unit continued forward, one thought stayed with him. This war might change many things. But it would not decide who he became. That part was still his. They moved for another hour before stopping. No one spoke about what had happened. But silence can carry suspicion just as easily as fear. Daniel felt it before he saw it. A glance from the soldier walking beside him. Then another. Not accusing. Just searching. During a brief halt, his closest friend in the unit, Harris, leaned slightly closer. You had him, Harris said quietly. It wasn't anger. It wasn't praise either.
We need to keep our heads down.
Just a statement.
I know, but we stick together.
Daniel didn't
Always.
answer immediately. The forest around them felt tighter now. More crowded. I know, Daniel replied. Harris studied him for a moment longer. Then nodded once. No judgment. But no agreement either. And as the unit prepared to move again, Daniel realized something heavier than fear. In war, your decisions don't just define you. They define how others see you. They continued forward. But something had changed. Daniel could feel it in the distance between him and the others. No one accused him. No one confronted him. But war has its own silent rules. And one of them is simple. Hesitation is remembered. As they walked, Daniel replayed the moment again and again. The shadow. The breath. The choice. He wondered what the others would have done. He wondered what they expected him to do. For the first time, the fear wasn't about the enemy ahead. It was about becoming the weak link behind. He had always believed courage meant action. Pulling the trigger. Charging forward. Not stepping back. But now he questioned something deeper. What if real courage sometimes looks like restraint? The forest ahead grew brighter as the sun rose higher. And with every step, Daniel understood one thing clearly. The war outside was only part of the battle. The rest was happening within him. By late afternoon, the forest began to thin. The air felt heavier now. More exposed. The unit slowed. Scouts signaled something ahead. Daniel felt the tension return instantly. Not the same fear as before. This was sharper. Clearer. Through the trees, movement again. Not distant this time. Closer. A figure stepped into partial view. Daniel raised his rifle automatically. His breathing steadied. This time, his hands did not shake. He had already faced the question once. Now it returned. But differently. The figure ahead froze. So did Daniel. In that suspended second, something unexpected happened. He didn't feel panic. He didn't feel hesitation. He felt control. Not because he wanted to fire, but because he knew he could. And he understood something important. The power to act is not the same as the need to act. The forest held its breath. So did he. The moment passed. The figure ahead stepped back into the trees. No shot was fired. No command was shouted. Just a silent understanding carried by distance. The unit moved on. And so did Daniel. But something inside him was no longer uncertain. He had faced the question twice. The first time, he was afraid. The second time, he was aware. War would continue. Orders would be given. Danger would not disappear. But now he understood something that no training had ever taught him. Strength is not proven in noise. It is proven in restraint. Courage is not always pulling the trigger. Sometimes, it is choosing who you will be when no one is watching. As the sun finally broke through the trees, Daniel adjusted the weight of his rifle. It no longer felt heavier than his thoughts. And in that quiet turning point, he became someone he could live with.